Hereditary was written and directed by Ari Aster. This was his directorial debut, and the film premiered back in 2018. The film stars Toni Collette, Gabriel Byrne, Alex Wolff, and Millie Shapiro. After the death of her mother, Annie Graham and her family begin to discover hidden truths about her late mother and her secret life a part of a mysterious cult. After a following series of tragedies and mysterious events ensue, tensions arise within the Graham family as their fates are now orchestrated by a dark and demonic presence. Okay, so before I give you guys my thoughts, I do want to let you know that this review will have spoilers. I'm not going to give away everything, but I will be discussing some important events that happen in the film. So if you do not want any spoilers whatsoever, here is your warning. So be sure to go check out the film and then come back and check out this review. So I've only seen this film once back when it was originally released in 2018. And while my wife was, and still is not a fan of it to this day for that matter, I personally enjoyed it. But after rewatching it recently, I have to admit, it hit me a little bit harder the second time around. And I'll explain why in just a bit. So for starters, what I really liked about this film is the cinematography. The visuals of Hereditary give off very eerie vibes from start to finish, and gives off the impression throughout the film that something dark is coming or something is definitely not right. And there are some shots that I thought were accomplished especially well. Annie Graham crafts small houses and small figures, and there is one scene where we zoom into one of those houses that she crafted, and it transitions to one of the rooms in the actual house, and we see the family interact inside. I really enjoyed that transition, and we get similar moments like that throughout the story. Now again, spoilers if you haven't seen it, but Millie Shapiro's character Charlie, the youngest daughter, is shockingly killed very early in the film. She's suffering from an allergic reaction at a party, and while her brother Peter is driving her to the hospital, she sticks her head out of the window of the car to get some air and is decapitated by a telephone pole. I have to be honest, that was a shocking plot twist, but weirdly enough, it was very effective in engaging me in the film. I originally thought her character was going to be the focus of most or all of the story, but since her death happens very early in the movie, it leaves you with a little intrigue, as from then on, you're left wondering what's going to happen next, and what kind of horror film is this going to be? And on that note, that begs the question, is Hereditary a scary movie? Well, personally, I would say yes, but not in ways that you would expect. What I also really appreciate about this film was its uniqueness and how it's not your traditional horror film you would see today, with slashers or jump scares and such, and instead focuses on the horrors of grief, family trauma, shocking family secrets, and grudges, just to name a few. But it does all connect to a dark conspiracy, which also represents the horrors of being watched and how certain events, or your lives for that matter, may be in the hands of other outside forces. Yes, Hereditary does have its fair share of shocking and scary scenes, but it's done in a very tasteful way. Hereditary also changes things up a bit on that front, as there are moments where instead of implying a jump scare is about to happen, they instead show shots where the threat can be seen in plain sight, and just dwells on that shot for an extended period of time, leaving you waiting and wondering what's about to happen. And I thought that was a pretty effective method. I remember seeing that the first time and feeling pretty uneasy. And it also leads to the question, which scare tactic is worse? Possibly knowing something may be lurking in the shadows and is about to jump out of wherever it's hiding and attack, or seeing it in plain sight, just completely motionless, waiting, which completely catches you off guard in my opinion, and leaves you wondering what it's about to do. Interesting thought. So let's talk about the acting. The cast was amazing. I thought each and every one of the actors really did well, and most of you have probably heard of how Toni Collette's performance was worthy of an Oscar. Well, I can honestly say that I'm on that train as well, because I thought her performance was fantastic. And if I remember correctly, I know that she was nominated for several awards and won at least one of them for her performance. She really carried the whole film. Earlier, I mentioned that this film hit a little bit harder my second time watching it, and that's because I was watching it from the perspective of a parent. When I first saw this film, my kids had not been born yet, and while I still sympathized with Annie back then, the second viewing made me heartbroken. Annie's reaction to Charlie's death was heart-wrenching. And Alex Wolff, who played Peter, the older brother, his performance was great as well, especially during the scene of the accident that cost Charlie her life. You could just literally see the shock and trauma written all over Peter's face. And you can get a pretty good sense of the pain that he's feeling from all of the guilt, the trauma, and the grief after Charlie's death. Now, Gabriel Byrne plays the father, Steve Graham, and his performance was very sympathetic as well, as in the midst of all the tragedy, he is the only one that is trying to hold the emotional fort down and help his family move on. And I also have to give props to actress Ann Dowd, who played Joan, who in the film befriends Annie, as she too has experienced a terrible loss. She later convinces Annie to perform a seance to connect with Charlie, as she did to connect with her lost relatives. And while you may think she's trying to be a good and supportive friend to Annie, it's later revealed that she was deceiving her to perform the seance for more sinister reasons. It's revealed that she is a part of the same cult that Annie's mother is involved with, where they are trying to release this powerful demon known as Paimon. I won't go too much into detail about how or if that happens, but with this film, you definitely need to put a lot of your attention into it because there are some blink and you'll miss it type details that connect to the events of the story. Now, probably the only negatives that I have for this film is that while I was invested in this story, the pacing is a little slow, and it takes a bit for things to really go from bad to worse. Again, it didn't bother me, but I can see where some people can possibly get a little bored. Just be advised going into this that this is not your traditional horror film with some of the traditional horror elements like jump scares. And also, there were some details in the ending that I think are a little confusing, especially involving the cult. After my second watch through, I understand them a little better now, and I'm all for endings that keep you guessing, but again, I thought how it was done was a little confusing. And to add to that, I was a little confused about how certain events or details all linked to the history or lore behind the antagonist, Paimon. But I will say that, and this is just speculation on my part, but maybe that was the intention, which if that was the case, that was pretty effective because introducing an antagonist that you may know little to nothing about just further increases the intimidation factor in my opinion. I'm going to give Hereditary an A-. So if you're in the mood for a unique horror film with a very eerie and unsettling story with great cast, great performances, and a great score, I definitely recommend you guys check this out. That is going to be my review for Hereditary. Guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please hit that like button. And if you're enjoying my content and you're new to my channel and you would like to stay updated for whenever I post more videos, then please consider to hit that subscribe button. But guys, thank you so much again. Have a great one.